My name is Thea, and I'm 34 years old. A few weeks ago, I woke up in a hospital room. I had a 6-inch cut on my back and one of my kidneys was missing. I wasn't in a car crash. I didn't have cancer or anything that needed surgery. When I asked the doctor what happened, he showed me a permission paper. The line that said, patient signature, was empty. But the line that said, guardian/legal representative, had my mother's name on it. I'm 34 years old. I don't need a guardian. 2 hours later, a police detective came into my room and asked me one question. Do you know where your kidney is? I did know. It was inside my brother. He was 2 floors below me in the same hospital. Before I tell you how this happened, please like and subscribe, but only if you really want to hear this story. And if you're watching, let me know where you're from and what time it is. I'd love to know who's listening. Now let me tell you what happened 2 months ago, the day my brother found out his kidneys were failing. My family has always had one rule that nobody talks about. Marcus comes first. My father, Gerald Reynolds, ran a hardware store in our small Pennsylvania town for 35 years before he retired. He's the kind of man who believes the world makes sense when everyone knows their place. Men provide money, women support the family, and sons carry the family name. My mother, Linda, never had a job outside our home. Her whole life was about being Gerald's wife and Marcus's mother. Notice I didn't say, and Thea's mother. That's because in our family, I was always second. I was a background character in someone else's story. Marcus is 38. He can be nice when he wants something. In the past 15 years, he's had 6 different jobs. None lasted longer than 2 years. Every time he failed, he had an excuse. The economy, bad bosses, bad luck. And every time my parents helped him. Me. I paid for my own nursing school. I worked double shifts for years and saved every penny until I could buy my own 1-bedroom apartment in Philadelphia. Nothing fancy, just mine. My nursing certificate hangs on the wall next to a plant that somehow stays alive even though I work a lot. Last Thanksgiving, I came home with news about my promotion to head nurse. I was proud. For once, I thought they might be proud too. My father looked up from his dinner plate and asked, "Is Marcus coming this year?" That was it. That was my celebration. There's one other important thing about me. I'm the only person in my family with O-negative blood. That's called a universal donor. My mother mentioned it once when I was 17. Good thing we have Thea, she said. She can give blood to anyone. I didn't think much about it then. I should have. 6 weeks before I lost my kidney, my phone rang at 2 a.m. It was my mother, and she was crying. Not the fake crying she does when she wants attention. These were real tears. It's Marcus, she said. He's in the hospital. His kidneys are failing. I drove 3 hours in the dark to get there. Whatever our past problems, he was still my brother. The news was bad. Both his kidneys had basically stopped working. The reason? 15 years of drinking too much alcohol. The kind of drinking my parents always said was just blowing off steam or going through a tough time. That tough time had destroyed his organs. When I walked into his room, Marcus looked gray and smaller, even though he'd always been the golden child. Tubes connected him to a dialysis machine that was doing the work his body couldn't do anymore. On his wrist, I saw a Rolex watch. Fake, I knew, but expensive looking. A gift he bought himself with money our parents had given him. My father stood at the end of the bed like a general looking at a battlefield. The doctors say he needs a transplant within 3 months, he said, or he won't make it. 3 months. The transplant waiting list usually takes 5 to 7 years. My mother held her prayer beads, her lips moving in silent prayer. She looked at me, then at Marcus, then back at me. Something cold went through my chest. The way they were looking at me, it wasn't worry. It was like they were figuring something out. My father looked at me for a long moment before looking back at Marcus. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. In that moment I felt it, the change. Like I'd just been measured. Like I was no longer his daughter. I was a thing they could use. 1 week after the diagnosis, my mother invited me to dinner. Family meeting, she called it, to talk about next steps. I drove to their house, the same house I grew up in. Nothing had changed. Same oak table, same china cabinet with the fancy plates we never used. Same picture of Marcus's high school football championship above the fireplace. There was no picture of me anywhere. We sat down to pot roast. My father took his place at the head of the table like always and cleared his throat. "I've been doing some research," he said, cutting his meat without looking up. "The transplant list is very long. Most people don't make it." My mother touched her eyes with a napkin. If only there were another way. If only someone in the family was compatible. She left the sentence hanging there, like bait on a fishing hook. I kept eating. I knew what they were doing. I just wanted to see how far they'd go. "Thea," my father said, finally looking at me. "You're O negative. Universal donor. That's rare. Special." The first time he'd ever called me that. "We're not asking," he added quickly. "We're just thinking out loud." Marcus stayed quiet the whole dinner. He looked at his phone, scrolled through something, typed a quick message. When I stood to clear the dishes, I caught a quick look at his screen before he could hide it. A text to my father. "She's thinking about it." I wasn't thinking about it. But they didn't know that yet. I said goodnight, drove home, and tried to tell myself that my family, my own flesh and blood, wouldn't actually expect me to give up an organ without asking. I was wrong. A few days after that dinner, I asked to meet my parents alone. We sat in their living room. Me on the small couch, them on the bigger couch across from me. Afternoon light came through the windows, catching dust in the air. Everything felt frozen. Waiting. "I've thought about it," I said. "And the answer is no." The silence that followed felt heavy and thick. My mother's face fell apart. "No. What do you mean, no?" "I mean I'm not donating my kidney to Marcus." My father's jaw got tight. "And why not?" I had prepared for this. "Because I need both my kidneys for my own health. Because kidney donation has real risks, infection, pain that doesn't go away, kidney problems later. And because Marcus's condition happened because of choices he made. Choices everyone in this family let him make for 15 years. The explosion came faster than I expected. "You'd let your brother die?" My father slammed his hand on the armrest. "Your own blood? For what? To be mean?" My mother was crying now. The fake kind. "I raised you, Thea. I fed you, gave you clothes, kept a roof over your head. And this is how you repay me?" Stood up. My body isn't a payment plan. I walked out to my car, a Honda Civic I'd bought myself with money I'd earned, and sat in the driver's seat for a full minute before starting the car. I thought it was over. I thought they'd be angry for a while, then accept it and move on. As I drove onto the highway, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't know. "You'll regret this." I told myself it was sent to the wrong person. I didn't believe it. The weeks that followed were quiet in a way that should have warned me. First, I was removed from the family group chat. No announcement. No explanation. I just suddenly couldn't see messages from the people I'd known my whole life. Then a coworker, Jenny from radiology, stopped me in the hallway. "Hey, this is weird, but did you know someone called the hospital asking about you?" My stomach dropped. What did they ask? Something about your mental health. Whether you'd shown any strange behavior. She made air quotes. HR talked to them. They wouldn't say their name. I went to HR that afternoon. The manager, a woman named Patricia with thick glasses and a permanent frown, confirmed it. "Someone said you have mental health problems affecting your job," she said, reading from a note. "Anonymous caller. We have to write it down, but we haven't seen any problems. Still, is there anything you want to tell us?" I told her no. But I knew who had made that call. That weekend, I visited my mother. She was at the kitchen table with her laptop open, looking at something. When she saw me, she slammed it shut. "Just checking emails," she said too quickly. But I'd seen it. The subject line, Plan B timeline. "What's Plan B?" I asked. She laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Nothing. Work stuff." My mother didn't work. I should have pushed harder. I should have demanded answers. Instead, I let her give me coffee and pretend everything was normal. I was still trying to believe the best about them. That was my mistake. I learned what Plan B meant much later. After the surgery, after the investigation, after everything fell apart. This is what the FBI figured out. 3 days after I refused to donate, my father drove 45 minutes to Briarwood Country Club. He met Dr. Howard Mercer on the 9th hole of the golf course, a transplant surgeon he'd been golfing with for 20 years. They walked the back 9 holes together while my father explained the situation. My daughter has some mental health issues, he said, according to Dr. Mercer's later testimony. My father was calm, reasonable, even sympathetic. Nothing serious, but enough that she can't make major medical decisions on her own. The family has informal guardianship. We need to move forward with the transplant, and she can't give permission herself. Dr. Mercer raised the obvious concern. Living organ donation required an independent advocate, someone whose only job was to protect the donor. There were mental health evaluations, ethics committee reviews, multiple consent conversations. My father had thought about this. Riverside is a private surgery center, Dr. Mercer said in his statement. Not a big hospital. We didn't have the same oversight. I handled the transplant program personally. The advocate, the mental evaluation, the ethics review. I could simplify those, combine them. What he meant was he could skip them completely. My father asked what it would take. Dr. Mercer named his price. $50,000 to his personal foundation, plus a guarantee that if anything went wrong, Gerald would take full responsibility. They shook hands on the 18th hole. My father handed him a check for $50,000, a donation to Dr. Mercer's personal foundation. The date was set. The plan was simple. Get me to a different hospital, one where nobody knew me. Sedate me before I could ask questions. Do the surgery. By the time I woke up, it would be done. She's a daughter, my father reportedly said. She's not married, no kids. What does she need 2 kidneys for? She should be grateful to help her brother. This is what family does. I found out later that this wasn't even his first try. 10 years earlier, when Marcus had his first health scare, a liver problem that got better on its own, my father had asked a similar question. Could a family member donate part of their liver without full permission? Dr. Mercer had said no then. This time he said yes. 2 weeks after I refused, my mother called. She was crying, but soft this time, gentle. The voice she used when she wanted forgiveness. I've been thinking a lot, she said, about how things ended between us. It wasn't right, Thea. You're my daughter. Whatever happens with Marcus, you're still my daughter. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. Your father and I talked, she continued. We want to make things right. We scheduled a family checkup at a clinic outside the city. All of us together. A fresh start. A way to bond again. Something felt wrong. The timing, the sweetness. But 3 weeks of silence had worn me down. 3 weeks of being erased from my own family. And there was something else. Something I'm ashamed to admit. Part of me still wanted to believe. Still wanted my mother to be the person I'd needed her to be my whole life. That part of me whispered, maybe they've realized they were wrong. Maybe this is their way of saying sorry. I know now that hope can be a trap, but back then I couldn't see it. Just a checkup? I asked. Just a checkup. And maybe lunch after. Please. Thea. I said yes. The day of the appointment, I drove to Riverside Medical Center, a private surgery place about an hour from Philadelphia. Not a hospital in the normal sense. More like a fancy clinic for people who could afford privacy. The kind of place with marble floors and fresh flowers in the lobby. The kind of place where wealthy people went for procedures they didn't want on their regular medical records. Cosmetic surgery, wellness treatments, and apparently organ theft. I learned later that Riverside operated outside the big hospital networks. No connection to university medical centers. No required reporting to regional transplant coordinators. Dr. Mercer had helped create their transplant program himself, which meant he'd also written the oversight rules, or rather the lack of them. But standing in that lobby, I didn't know any of this. I just saw the marble, the flowers, the professional smiles. My mother met me in the parking lot wearing a cashmere sweater I'd never seen before. A little gift, she said, pressing a matching one into my hands. For my girl. We walked in together. I signed in at reception. Then something strange happened. The nurse called only my name. Reynolds. Thea Reynolds. I looked around. My father wasn't there. Neither was Marcus. They're running late, my mother said. Go ahead. They'll catch up. I followed the nurse down a long hallway. I didn't see my father standing outside the window, watching me disappear through the double doors. I didn't see him nod at someone inside. I walked into that room trusting my mother. I shouldn't have. The exam room was cold. Not air conditioning cold. Something deeper. The kind of cold that gets into your bones before you realize something is wrong. A nurse handed me a paper gown and a cup of water. Change into this. We'll need some blood samples before the doctor sees you. Drink this first. It helps with the blood draw. I looked at the cup. Something flickered in the back of my mind. A warning I couldn't quite name. I'm an operating room nurse. I know medical procedures, and something about this felt wrong. But the nurse was smiling. The room was clean and professional. My mother was in the waiting area. What was I afraid of? That my own family would drug me? The thought seemed crazy, paranoid. So I drank it. That's the thing about trust. Even when it's broken, even when every sign points to danger, some part of us still wants to believe we're safe with the people who raised us. I wasn't safe. The nurse took 3 tubes of blood. Normal. Then she left, and I waited. The room started to tilt, just slightly at first. A softness at the edges of my vision. Then more. The lights overhead seemed to pulse. My hands felt heavy. Something's wrong. I tried to stand and nearly fell. My legs wouldn't work. My thoughts were turning fuzzy. The water. They put something in the water. I reached for my phone on the chair next to me. My fingers couldn't grip it. The screen blurred. The door opened. Through the haze, I saw him. My father standing in the hallway. His face was blank. Not angry, not sad, just determined, like a man finishing a task he'd been putting off. He nodded at someone I couldn't see. The nurse who'd given me the water stepped back into view. She wasn't nervous anymore. Her movements were quick and practiced. She'd done this before. I learned her name later. Patricia Vance. She'd worked with Dr. Mercer for 12 years. She was the one who witnessed my mother's signature on the permission form, who checked the box confirming the patient's guardian had been properly identified. She was also the one who put the drug in my water, timed perfectly so I'd be too impaired to object by the time anyone needed my permission. A doctor stepped into view. White coat, gray hair, the face of someone's grandfather. "Don't worry," he said. "You won't remember any of this." I tried to scream. My mouth wouldn't move. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was my father turning away. Not watching, not waiting. Just walking off like a man who'd done what needed to be done. What I'm about to tell you comes from the investigation. From statements and medical records and testimony that would eventually be read in a federal courtroom. The surgery took 4 hours. Dr. Howard Mercer, a board-certified transplant surgeon, made a 6-inch cut along my lower left back. He separated muscle, moved organs, and carefully removed my left kidney. Healthy, working, mine. In the operating notes, he wrote, "Living donor kidney removal. Donor permission obtained through legal guardian due to documented thinking impairment. Independent evaluation waived per family request. Patient unable to participate in standard assessment. Procedure without complications." The paperwork was detailed. A fake psychological evaluation supposedly done by a Dr. Rahman who didn't exist. A made-up ethics committee approval signed by Dr. Mercer himself as committee chair. A donor advocate form with Patricia Vance's signature claiming she'd met with me privately and confirmed I was willing to donate. None of it was real, but it looked real. It would pass a quick check. And at Riverside, no one was checking. Permission. As if my mother signing a piece of paper made any of this legal. As if a stack of fake documents could erase the fact that I was a capable adult who had never agreed to any of this. While I was on the table, unconscious and cut open, my kidney was rushed to another operating room down the hall. Marcus was already prepared. Waiting. In the family waiting area, my parents sat together. My father read a newspaper. My mother held her prayer beads, lips moving in prayer. Later, she would tell investigators she was praying for a successful outcome for the whole family. She wasn't praying for my safety. She wasn't asking God for forgiveness. She was thanking him that they'd found a way to save their son, the real child, the one who mattered, using parts taken from the other one. At 3:47 p.m. Dr. Mercer closed my cut. At 4:12 p.m. My kidney began working inside my brother's body. At 6:30 p.m., my parents left the hospital together, arm in arm. They stopped for dinner on the way home and celebrated with wine. Meanwhile, I lay alone in recovery, stitched up and emptied out. They didn't visit my room that night. They didn't need to. They'd gotten what they came for. I woke to pain. Not the dull ache of being tired or the sharp sting of a cut. Something deeper, something wrong. Like my body was screaming at me in a language I couldn't quite understand. My eyes opened to white ceiling tiles, bright lights, the rhythmic beeping of monitors, a recovery room. I tried to sit up and gasped. Fire exploded across my lower back. My hand flew to the source and found bandages, thick gauze, medical tape, a surgical cut. What happened? My mind raced backward. The exam room. The cup of water. The dizziness. My father's face in the doorway. Oh God. Oh God. No. I'm an operating room nurse. I've helped on hundreds of surgeries. I know exactly what a kidney removal cut feels like. I know what it means when you wake up with 6 inches of stitches on your side and a deep hollow ache where an organ used to be. I pressed the call button once, twice, 3 times. A nurse appeared, young, nervous, not looking at me. Miss Reynolds, you're awake. I'll get the doctor. What surgery did I have? My voice came out rough. What did they do to me? The doctor will explain everything. I'm an operating room nurse. I know what this cut is. Tell me. She looked at the floor, at the monitors, anywhere but at me. Please wait for the doctor. She left. I lay there staring at the ceiling, one hand pressed against the bandages on my back. I knew the answer. I knew it the moment I woke up. But I needed to hear someone say it. I needed to see the proof. I needed to know exactly what my family had done to me. Dr. Howard Mercer walked into my room like a man expecting thanks. He was about 60, silver-haired, wearing the confident smile of someone who'd spent decades being respected. His white coat was clean and perfect. His handshake would have been firm if I'd offered my hand. I didn't. Miss Reynolds, he said, sitting in the chair beside my bed. Good to see you awake. The procedure went beautifully. Your brother is recovering well, and your kidney is already working in his body. You should be very proud. I didn't give permission for any procedure. His smile wavered just for a moment. Of course you did. Well, your guardian did on your behalf. I don't have a guardian. I'm 34 years old. He reached into the folder he'd brought and pulled out a single sheet of paper. A permission form, standard hospital issue, the kind I'd seen hundreds of times. The line marked, patient signature, was blank. The line marked, guardian/legal representative, had my mother's signature. Your mother signed as your medical guardian, Dr. Mercer said, as if this explained everything. Given your condition. What condition? Your parents explained that you have thinking difficulties, that you're unable to make complex medical decisions on your own. I stared at him. Dr. Mercer, I said slowly, I am an operating room nurse with 10 years of experience. I have a bachelor's degree and multiple professional certificates. I live alone, manage my own money, and hold a job that requires me to make life or death decisions daily. His face went pale. This signature, I continued, holding up the form, has no legal standing. Under federal law, doing surgery without informed permission on a mentally capable adult is assault and battery. I am looking at evidence of a crime. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. The form said everything that needed to be said. My parents arrived an hour later with flowers, lilies, the expensive kind from the flower shop downtown, wrapped in cream-colored paper. My mother carried them like an offering. My father walked 2 steps behind her, hands in his pockets, looking around the room like he was checking out a property he might buy. There's our girl, my mother said, setting the flowers on my bedside table. How are you feeling? I looked at her, at the woman who had pushed me on swings, braided my hair for school photos, sat beside my bed when I had the flu. The woman who had signed a piece of paper that let strangers cut me open. You took my kidney. Her smile didn't change. Oh honey, we saved your brother. You were part of something beautiful. Without asking me. Without telling me. You drugged me and let them cut out my organ. My father stepped forward. Thea, don't be dramatic. It's done now, and Marcus is going to live. You should feel good about that. I should feel good? You're a young woman, he said, and his voice had that tone, the one he used when explaining something obvious to someone slow. No husband, no children. What did you need 2 kidneys for? Marcus has a future, a real future. And I don't. He shrugged. You're a daughter. Daughters sacrifice for their families. That's how it works. My mother nodded. We knew you'd understand eventually. You just needed a little push. I looked at them. Really looked, searching for guilt, for shame, for any sign that they understood what they'd done. There was nothing. They believed they were right. They believed I owed them this. And in that moment, I realized something that broke me and freed me at the same time. I had never been their daughter. I had always been their spare parts. After my parents left, satisfied, smiling, certain they'd done nothing wrong, I lay in the dark for a long time. The machines beeped. The 4 dripped. Somewhere down the hall, someone coughed. I thought about letting it go. I thought about what it would mean to fight them, the lawyers, the accusations, the family that would call me ungrateful, mean, cruel. I thought about Marcus somewhere in this same building, waking up with my kidney inside him, living because they'd taken a piece of me without asking. And then I picked up my phone. The hospital hadn't taken it. Why would they? I was supposed to be a willing donor, a loving sister, someone who'd wake up grateful for the chance to help. I dialed 911. I need to report an assault, I said. My voice was steady. I'd found something on the other side of despair. Not peace, but clarity. I was brought to Riverside Medical Center under false reasons. I was drugged without my permission. And while I was unconscious, a surgeon removed my kidney. The dispatcher asked me to repeat myself. I did. My parents signed a permission form claiming to be my legal guardians. I am a 34-year-old mentally capable adult. I have no guardians. This is organ theft. This is a federal crime. 2 hours later, a woman in a dark blazer walked into my room. Detective Vivian Carter, FBI, assigned to the healthcare fraud unit. She was about 45 with close-cut gray hair and the kind of face that gave nothing away. She sat in the chair where Dr. Mercer had sat and pulled out a notebook. Miss Reynolds, she said, I have one question for you. I waited. Do you know where your kidney went? I looked at her. Yes. It's inside my brother. Room 412, 2 floors down. She wrote something in her notebook. Then she looked up. Tell me everything. Can you imagine it? Your own parents, the people who were supposed to protect you, becoming the ones who took a piece of your body without asking. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like your family didn't respect your boundaries, like your no didn't matter, I want you to know you're not alone. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you are in your own journey. But this story is just beginning. Because the detective asked me a question, and what I found out next changed everything. Detective Carter didn't react when I told her my kidney was in my brother. She just wrote it down. Calm, like she'd heard worse. Maybe she had. Cases like this are more common than people think, she said, flipping to a new page in her notebook. Family organ trafficking. Usually it's overseas, but we've seen it in America too. A parent decides one child is more valuable than another. A spouse decides they need their partner's kidney. People justify incredible things when they're desperate. She paused. The system is supposed to prevent this. Independent advocates, mental evaluations, ethics committees. But those protections only work if everyone follows them. When you have a rogue doctor at a private place with minimal oversight, operating outside the big hospital networks. She shook her head. The guardrails disappear. How does someone like Mercer get away with it? He built his own kingdom. Small facility, hand-picked staff, no external reporting requirements. The patients who come to places like Riverside want privacy. They're not asking questions about rules. And the transplant coordinators at the major centers, they never see these cases. They happen completely off the books. This wasn't desperation, I said. This was planning. Months of it. Walk me through it from the beginning. So I did. I told her about Marcus's diagnosis, the family dinner, the pressure that started subtle and turned demanding, my refusal, the silence that followed, the anonymous call to my HR department, the family checkup that was never a checkup. I told her about the email I'd glimpsed on my mother's laptop. Plan B timeline. Detective Carter's pen stopped moving. Plan B. I don't know what was in it, but I saw the subject line. We can get a warrant for email records, she said. If there's a paper trail, we'll find it. She stood, tucking her notebook into her jacket pocket. Miss Reynolds, I need to be honest with you. Proving this won't be easy. Your family will claim you were impaired, that you couldn't give permission, that they were acting in your best interest. I have 10 years of performance reviews that say otherwise. Good. Keep every piece of documentation you can find. She paused at the door. One more thing. The doctor who did the surgery, Howard Mercer, we've had our eye on him before. This might not be his first time. She left, and I lay there realizing that what happened to me might have happened to others. That I might not be the only one. The counterattack came within 24 hours. I was still in the hospital, still recovering from having an organ removed against my will, when I received a certified letter. It came from a law firm downtown, Richards, Hartley, and Associates. The cover letter was brief. Enclosed, please find a copy of the statement provided to investigators by our client, Gerald Reynolds, regarding recent allegations. Inside was a copy of the statement. I read it with shaking hands. My daughter, Thea Reynolds, has a history of mental instability. As her parents, we have informally acted as her guardians for years. She is unable to make complex decisions about her own health care. The surgery was done with proper family permission and was entirely legal. Attached were documents I'd never seen. A letter of concern sent to my employer 6 months earlier claiming I'd shown strange behavior at a family gathering. Notes from a supposed conversation with a family therapist I'd never met. And the anonymous HR complaint, traced, I later learned, directly to my father's cell phone. They had built a paper trail, a story of a broken daughter who needed protecting from herself. That afternoon, my hospital called. Miss Reynolds, given the circumstances, we're placing you on leave pending investigation. What circumstances? We've received documentation suggesting you may have mental health concerns that affect your ability to do your job. They'd gotten to my job before I could defend myself. I sat in my hospital bed, stitched up and alone, holding the evidence of my family's betrayal. They had taken my kidney. Now they were trying to take my career, my reputation, my sanity. And I almost let them. Almost. 3 days later, I went home to an empty apartment. The plant on my windowsill had started to turn yellow. Nobody had watered it while I was gone. Nobody had known I was gone. I lowered myself onto my couch slowly, carefully, the stitches in my back pulling with every movement, and stared at the wall. No job. No family. No one who believed me. My parents had spent weeks building a version of me that didn't exist. An unstable woman who couldn't be trusted, whose word meant nothing. And they'd done it so completely that even my own hospital had doubted me. I thought about the hearing that would come. My father in his blazer, my mother with her tissues, both of them crying about their troubled daughter who'd made up terrible lies because she couldn't accept their love. I thought about Marcus recovering with my kidney inside him, probably already rehearsing his testimony about how I'd wanted to help but my mental problems made me forget. I walked to the bathroom mirror and lifted my shirt. The bandage was still there. Underneath it, a scar that would never fully heal. Evidence. But would it be enough? I sat back down and put my head in my hands. For the first time since waking up in that recovery room, I cried. I cried until I couldn't breathe, until my whole body shook, until the stitches burned and I didn't care. I almost gave up that night. I almost decided they would win. That they always won. That people like my father always got what they wanted, and people like me always paid the price. Then my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Thea, it's Nathan Cole from the operating room. I saw your file. Something doesn't add up. Can we talk? I stared at the screen, and I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. I met Nathan Cole at a coffee shop 3 miles from the hospital. Far enough that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. He was in his early 40s. A quiet man with kind eyes who'd worked as an anesthesiologist in our operating room for as long as I could remember. We'd never been close, just co-workers who nodded at each other over surgical masks. But I'd always trusted him. He had a laptop open on the table when I arrived. I shouldn't be doing this, he said, not bothering with greetings. If anyone finds out I accessed your records, I'm done. But I saw your name on the suspension list, and I knew something was wrong. What did you find? He turned the laptop toward me. It was my anesthesia record from Riverside Medical Center, the hospital where I'd been operated on. Look at the timeline, he said, pointing. You were given a drug at 10:47 a.m. The permission form is timestamped 10:32 a.m. He looked at me. You were drugged 15 minutes before anyone claims permission was obtained. My hands started shaking. And here. He scrolled down. The attending note says, patient sedated at family's request before permission verification. That's a massive rule violation. You're supposed to verify permission before sedation, not after. This is either terrible negligence or they knew I wouldn't give permission. Exactly. He pulled out a USB drive. I made copies. Everything, the anesthesia record, the surgical notes, the permission form with the timeline problems. This isn't just malpractice, Thea. This is evidence of conspiracy. I took the drive. It felt weightless, impossibly small to contain something so important. Why are you helping me? Nathan closed his laptop. Because I've worked with you for 6 years. You're one of the most capable nurses I know. And the idea that you couldn't give permission for your own surgery? He shook his head. That's insulting to you and to everyone who's ever worked beside you. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just held the drive and let myself believe for the first time that I might actually win. 2 days later, Detective Carter called. We got the warrant for the email records, she said. Miss Reynolds, you need to come see this. The FBI field office in Philadelphia was everything you'd expect. Gray walls, bright lights, coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since forever. Detective Carter led me to a conference room where printed emails were spread across the table like evidence of a crime scene. Because they were. Plan B, Carter said, tapping the first sheet. Your father sent this to your mother and brother 2 days after you refused to donate. I picked it up. Linda, I talked to Mercer. He says if we can document Thea as mentally incompetent, we can sign as guardians. We need to move fast. Marcus doesn't have much time. There were more. Make the appointment at Mercer's hospital. Tell her it's a family checkup. Don't mention anything else. Howard confirmed he'll accept the guardian permission. The fee is $50,000 to his foundation. Make sure she doesn't bring her phone inside. We don't want any recordings. And then the one that hit me hardest, an email from Marcus. Thanks, Dad. This is the only way. She owes us anyway. She owes us. 28 years of being the overlooked daughter, the one who was never good enough, the one who worked and saved and built a life from nothing. And in my brother's mind I still owed them. These emails establish planning ahead of time, Carter said. Conspiracy to commit assault, medical fraud, forgery. We have enough for a grand jury. I set the paper down carefully. What happens now? Now we arrest them. I nodded. I should have felt triumphant, proven right. Instead, I just felt tired. But somewhere underneath the exhaustion, there was something else. Determination. They'd taken my kidney. They wouldn't take anything else. The next week moved fast. First came the FBI's official statement to my hospital's HR department. I watched Patricia's face change as she read it. The same woman who had questioned me about mental health concerns, now learning that those concerns had been made up by people planning to steal my organs. Miss Reynolds, she said, folding her hands on her desk, on behalf of the hospital, I want to offer our sincerest apologies. The email arrived an hour later, full reinstatement, back pay, a formal letter of apology from the hospital CEO, printed on heavy cream-colored letterhead. We regret the distress caused by the accusations made against you. Our investigation has confirmed that these accusations were false and appear to have been part of a coordinated effort to hurt your reputation. We are grateful for your years of service and look forward to welcoming you back. I read it 3 times, then put it in a folder with the other evidence. More documentation. More proof. Detective Carter called that afternoon. We traced the anonymous HR complaint, she said. The call came from your father's cell phone. He didn't even try to hide it. He didn't think he'd need to. No, he didn't. A pause. There's something else. We've started looking into Dr. Mercer's other cases. Early review suggests your surgery wasn't an isolated incident. There may be other victims. Other victims. Other daughters or sons or spouses carved up while they slept because someone decided their organs were more valuable than their independence. When is the hearing? I asked. Grand jury convened yesterday. Charges came down this morning. Gerald Reynolds, Linda Reynolds, Marcus Reynolds, and Howard Mercer. Charges include conspiracy, assault with bodily harm, medical fraud, and forgery. And the arrests? Already done. Your parents were taken into custody 2 hours ago. Marcus was arrested at the hospital. He's still recovering, but he's well enough for a jail cell. I exhaled. It had started. 1 month later, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror in a navy blue suit I'd bought specifically for this occasion. The subpoena sat on my kitchen counter, my name in black letters, summoning me to testify at the preliminary hearing for United States versus Reynolds. Today I would sit in a federal courtroom and tell a judge what my family had done to me. I would look at my parents, the people who raised me, fed me, claimed to love me, and explain how they drugged me, cut me open, and stolen a piece of my body. Detective Carter had warned me it would be difficult. Defense attorneys live for moments like this, she'd said. They'll try to paint you as unstable, mean, a daughter attacking her loving family. I know. You can't get emotional. You can't raise your voice. You have to be calm, factual, and unshakable. I'm an operating room nurse. I've held people's hearts in my hands while surgeons repaired them. I can handle this. She'd looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Now, staring at my reflection, I practiced the words I would say, the facts. The timeline. The permission form with my mother's signature. No tears, no begging, just truth. My phone buzzed, a text from Nathan, "You've got this. We're all watching." I allowed myself a small smile. Then I grabbed my purse, locked my apartment, and drove to the federal courthouse. The building rose against a gray November sky. Columns, marble steps, flags snapping in the wind. News vans lined the street. The story had leaked, local family accused of organ theft. I walked past the cameras without looking at them. Whatever happened next, I would face it head-on. No more hiding. No more silence. Today the truth would speak. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Federal preliminary hearings don't have juries. Just a judge, the attorneys, and the defendants. But the gallery was packed. Reporters filled the back rows, notebooks open, pens ready. A few faces I recognized from the hospital sat scattered throughout, colleagues who'd come to support me. And at the defense table, my family. My father wore a blazer I'd seen 100 times. Navy blue, slightly too tight across the shoulders. He sat up straight, jaw clenched, radiating the same stubborn certainty he'd had my entire life. Even now, facing federal charges, he looked like a man who believed he'd done nothing wrong. My mother sat beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She'd dressed in black, as if attending a funeral. Her own, maybe, or the death of the family she'd sacrificed everything to preserve. And Marcus, my brother, was pale, thinner than I'd ever seen him. The surgery and arrest had aged him 10 years. He stared at the table, unable or unwilling to meet my eyes. The kidney inside him, my kidney, was keeping him alive. I wondered if he thought about that. If every beat of his heart reminded him of what they'd done. I took my seat behind the prosecutor's table. The judge entered. Everyone stood. This court will come to order. We are here for the preliminary hearing in the matter of United States versus Gerald Reynolds, Linda Reynolds, Marcus Reynolds, and Howard Mercer. The gavel fell, and I felt something settle inside me. Not peace, not yet, but certainty. They had operated in shadows, in lies, in the assumption that I would stay quiet, stay small, stay the obedient daughter they'd always expected. But here in this room, there were no shadows, only light. And I was ready. Please state your name for the record. Thea Marie Reynolds. The prosecutor, a sharp-featured woman named Diane Walsh, stood near the witness box. Miss Reynolds, can you describe your relationship with the defendants? They're my family. Gerald is my father. Linda is my mother. Marcus is my older brother. And before October 14th of this year, how would you describe that relationship? I took a breath. Complicated. I was never the priority. That was always Marcus. Can you tell the court what happened on October 14th? So I did. I walked through every detail. The diagnosis. The pressure to donate. My refusal. The silence that followed. The anonymous complaints to my employer. The family checkup. That was a trap. I described waking up in recovery with stitches in my back and a missing organ. I described the permission form with my mother's signature. I described looking at my parents as they brought flowers and told me I should be grateful. The courtroom was silent. Even the reporters had stopped writing. When I finished, the prosecutor asked one final question. Miss Reynolds, when you discovered your mother had signed as your guardian, what did you think? I looked at my parents. My mother's hands were shaking. My father's jaw was tight. I thought for the first time in my life, I saw them clearly. A long pause. I thought I finally understood what I was to them. Not a daughter. Not a person. Just parts. Spare parts for the child who mattered. The words hung in the air. Somewhere in the gallery, I heard someone crying. I didn't look to see who. I just kept my eyes forward. Calm, factual, unshakable, just like I'd promised. Sitting in that witness box, looking at my parents for the first time since the hospital. The people I'd spent my whole life trying to please. I finally understood something. I was never going to be enough for them. Not because I was flawed but because they were. If this story is hitting close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes knowing you're not alone is the first step. But what happened next? When my father lost control, that's when everything changed. The defense attorney was a silver-haired man named Richard Hartley. He specialized in complex family matters, according to his website. What that meant, I learned quickly, was making victims sound like villains. Miss Reynolds, he said, approaching the witness box with a folder in his hands, you've described yourself as mentally capable, but isn't it true you've struggled with emotional control in the past? No. You've never had any incidents at work? Any conflicts with colleagues? I've been employed as an operating room nurse for 10 years with excellent performance reviews. He pulled a paper from his folder. I have here a complaint filed with your hospital's HR department. Filed anonymously by my father using his personal cell phone. The FBI traced it. The courtroom murmured. Hartley's smile flickered. Miss Reynolds, isn't it possible that your family, who clearly loves you, simply wanted to help you make a medical decision you were unable to make yourself? Before I could answer, a voice thundered from the defense table. She owes us. My father was on his feet, face purple with rage, pointing a finger in my direction. I fed her, clothed her, kept a roof over her head, and she has the nerve to sit there and, Mr. Reynolds. The judge's gavel cracked. Sit down. She's a daughter. Daughter's sacrifice. That's how it's always been. That's how it's supposed to be. Two bailiffs moved toward him. My mother was pulling at his sleeve, crying. Marcus had his head in his hands. But my father kept going, screaming now, veins bulging. You think you're better than us? You're nothing. You're spare parts, Thea. That's all you've ever been. The bailiffs forced him back into his chair. The courtroom was dead silent. And I sat in the witness box, perfectly still, and let his words echo. He'd said out loud what they'd always believed. Now everyone knew. After a 15-minute break, during which my father was warned that another outburst would result in contempt charges, the prosecutor called for the evidence to be shown. A large screen was wheeled into the courtroom. Your Honor, Diane Walsh said, the prosecution would like to enter into evidence a series of emails recovered from the defendant's personal accounts. The first email appeared on screen. Linda, I talked to Mercer. He says if we can document Thea as mentally incompetent, we can sign as guardians. We need to move fast. A murmur swept through the gallery. The second email. Make the appointment at Mercer's hospital. Tell her it's a family checkup. Don't mention anything else. My mother's hands flew to her mouth. The third. Make sure she doesn't bring her phone inside. We don't want any recordings. The fourth. Howard confirmed he'll accept the guardian permission. The fee is $50,000 to his foundation. And finally, the one from Marcus. Thanks, Dad. This is the only way. She owes us anyway. The prosecutor let the silence stretch. These emails, she said, show clear planning ahead of time. The defendants planned this surgery weeks in advance. They deliberately tricked Miss Reynolds. They paid a medical professional to participate in an illegal procedure. And they created a false paper trail to hurt their victim before she could even report the crime. She turned to the judge. This is not a family making a difficult medical decision. This is conspiracy. This is fraud. This is assault. The judge looked at my family. My father was staring at the wall. My mother was crying silently. Marcus hadn't lifted his head since his father's outburst. Based on the evidence presented, the judge said slowly, this court finds enough cause to proceed to trial. The gavel fell, and I exhaled for the first time in months. 2 weeks after the preliminary hearing, Detective Carter called with news. Dr. Mercer took a deal. I was in my apartment, finally back at work, finally starting to feel like myself again. What kind of deal? Full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. He's testifying against your family. A pause. And Thea, what he's saying, you should hear it from me first. We met at the FBI field office that afternoon. The statement transcript was thick. 50 pages of Drive Mercer explaining exactly how my family had approached him, what they'd said, what they'd paid. But it was page 43 that stopped my heart. Question: was this the first time Gerald Reynolds approached you about a family organ donation? No. About 10 years ago, when Marcus Reynolds had a health scare involving his liver, Gerald contacted me. He asked whether it would be possible to get a liver segment from his daughter without her direct permission. Question: and what was your response at that time? I told him it wasn't possible. The oversight was too strict. Question: did he say he would pursue other options? He said, and I quote, keep her in mind. She's my backup plan. I set the transcript down. 10 years ago. When I was 24, just starting my nursing career, proudly independent, my father was already calling me his backup plan. His insurance policy. Spare parts he could cash in whenever the real child needed them. He planned this for a decade, I said. Detective Carter nodded. At minimum. I thought about all those years, the holidays I'd shown up to, trying to earn their approval. The dinners where I was invisible. The birthday cards I sent that were never acknowledged. I had been auditioning for a part in a family that had already cast me as something else. I just hadn't known my role. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, handwritten on lined paper, postmarked from the Federal Detention Center where Marcus was being held awaiting trial. I recognized his handwriting, the same messy writing I'd seen on birthday cards when we were kids. Dear Thea, I don't expect you to read this. I wouldn't blame you if you burned it. I'm not going to lie and say I didn't know. I knew there was a plan. I knew Dad had talked to a doctor. I told myself it would be fine, that you'd understand eventually, that you'd forgive us because we're family. I didn't let myself think about what the plan actually meant. I didn't ask questions because I didn't want answers. That's not innocence. I know that now. That's cowardice. By the time I woke up from surgery and they told me it worked, I couldn't take it back. Your kidney was already inside me. And I told myself I'd find a way to make it right. I haven't. I can't. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I knew what they were doing was wrong, and I let it happen because I wanted to live. I'm writing because I want you to know that every day, every breath I take, I think about what it cost. I carry that weight. I'll carry it forever. You didn't owe us anything, Thea. You never did. I'm sorry. Marcus. I read it twice, then folded it, put it back in the envelope, and set it on my kitchen table. He wanted absolution. Wanted me to write back saying I understood, that I forgave him, that blood was thicker than betrayal. I thought about the email he'd sent my father. She owes us anyway. I thought about the years he'd taken everything. My parents' attention, their money, their love, while I worked double shifts and built a life from nothing. I pulled out a notepad and started to write a reply. Then I stopped. Some things don't deserve a response. I threw the notepad away and made myself dinner. He would live with my kidney inside him. He would live knowing where it came from. That was enough. The trial took 4 months. 4 months of testimony, evidence, cross-examination. For months of watching my family's lawyers try to paint me as unstable, mean, a daughter who couldn't accept her parents' love. It didn't work. The emails were too damning. The medical records too clear. Dr. Mercer's testimony too specific. On a gray morning in March, the verdict came down. Guilty. All counts. All defendants. 1 month later, I returned to the federal courthouse for sentencing. The courtroom was fuller than the preliminary hearing. The case had made national news. Family organ theft ring exposed. Camera crews lined the steps outside. I sat in the gallery and watched the judge read from his prepared statement. Gerald Reynolds, this court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison. My father's face didn't change. He'd been emotionless throughout the trial, convinced until the very end that he'd done nothing wrong. Linda Reynolds, this court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison. My mother collapsed into tears, real ones this time, the ones she'd saved for when the performance no longer mattered. Marcus Reynolds, this court sentences you to 10 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. Marcus looked at me for the first time since the trial began. I couldn't read his expression. Regret. Resignation. I didn't care anymore. Dr. Howard Mercer, this court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison with